So I've been replaying Spyro 2. He's purple, he's green,
and
he's a dragon. And he's totally not dead, you guys, I swear. Before being part of an evil corporate marketing scheme, though, he used to be a mascot platformer mostly associated with the PlayStation brand. Until his OG developers lost the license, and then he started to appear on all manner of systems. I mean, who can't remember such classics such as Spyro Enter the Dragonfly, or Spyro Orange, where he teams up with America's sweetheart, Crash Blumpercoot. Kill me now! But yeah, the original 3 Spyro games on the PS1 were Toad's games what I grew up with. And thus, for some fucking reason, I decided to review one of them really early on. Essentially, just wanting to replay the game for funsies and making this ham-fisted, forced-as-fuck review that didn't amount to anything. I mean, I made a joke about Final Fantasy VII, which was kinda neat, I guess. But other than that, I didn't really review the game as much as I just talked about it for a bit. So, I'd say that it's about time I do the game some proper justice, as my nostalgia boner is raging, revved up, and raring to go.
Let's make sex fuck.
Imagine a place as depressing as the most depressing place you could possibly imagine. Dark clouds, bleak, futureless neighborhoods, rain literally all the fucking time. Not great, innit? Well, despite just accurately describing most of the UK, this also describes the state in which Spyro and his homeboy Sparks have found themselves in. They want to go somewhere warm, somewhere sunny, somewhere with decidedly lower suicide rates. And so, they jump into a magical teleporty portal because plot, and accidentally end up being taken to the world of Avalar, which isn't at all like the tropical paradise the gang had hoped for. No, instead, this place is in a state of turmoil, being that the evil midget dinosaur, Ripto, is trying to take over the world and enslave the woodland creatures to make them do something, I don't know. And of course, with Spyro being the flamboyant quadruped what he is, he totes will defeat the evil Ripto and get all the goat bitches he could possibly wish for. Now, if there's one thing this game absolutely nails in terms of story, it is its presentation. Being that every stage is its own little fairy tale with plenty of zany characters, motivation, and proper opening and closing cutscenes. And of course, there's also the main plot that ties all of it together, but it does so in a very unintrusive way. I mean, it's a fucking 3D platformer, so the story is only so important, but I don't know, dude. Having little bits of dialogue that actually don't default to bland expository quest giving really adds a lot to the game's world. Even the voice acting is pretty okay good in a cartoony kind of way, though some of it does sound a bit patronizing.
Very good.
But other than that, it sets up what it needs to, frame shit in a noise context, and even can be mildly entertaining when it wants to be sometimes. What it frames and sets up though is of course the gameplay. Said gameplay involves you collecting shit in a 3D environment and doing minigames. Which sounds like fucking garbage, but that's mostly because I wrote that line at 5 AM like a complete blithering mongoloid. But it's a collectathon basically, so it tends to be quite a bit slower compared to the platformers that came before it and especially after. The music, the art, and the general vibe of it all might very well give you that, yeah, jump around, upbeat vibe, but in reality you won't really be doing a whole lot of jumping around. To balance that out though, they give you a small but interesting set of moves that give the game a surprising amount of variety. Spyro has the ability to flame shit because dragon, glide because dragon, and headbutt because goat, I guess. And naturally, the levels and enemies are all designed around that. Like You could have a dude wearing armor who cannot be flamed, or a guy who is rather large and thus impervious to headbutting. All of that might not sound like much, because on paper it really isn't. But the game spices it up enough in a gradual manner that it keeps shit interesting. Especially when they introduce enemies that do both or require very specific timing later on. And if that isn't enough to satiate your raging chub, the aforementioned minigames also keep the game from ever getting dull. Though, to be honest, not all of the minigamey side-questy things are fun, like the one where you need to play ice hockey with really awkward controls, for instance. Or the other one where you have to herd some big old cows to varying places across the map by constantly having to flame them in the right direction. Both aren't incredibly fun, both take way too long, and both also seem to be mysteriously absent from my recorded footage. I wonder why. But other than that, shit's pretty good, as they do a great job of utilizing the game's existing mechanics to spruce up the gameplay regardless of whether or not they really needed to in the first place. Something that really aids all of this as a whole, though, is the fact that the collectibles themselves serve many an in-game purpose. You see, collecting gems isn't just for points, as they double as a type of currency you use to get new abilities or to be able to advance. And killing enemies also has quite some extra incentive as you
Yield their soul.
which can be used to power magical gates that give you timed power-ups. Most of this shit is optional, which is good, but the game is streamlined in such a way where collecting, progressing, exploring, and unlocking secrets are done almost automatically or subconsciously by the player. And it's hidden well enough too. It's not like its design is simply funneling you down a hallway, it's more so down to the way things are placed and paced that really makes it easy to go from one thing onto the next. Kill a dude, spot a bunch of gems, grab the gem, see a platform in the distance, need to activate a gate or speed ramp to get there, group of enemies is nearby, kill them to activate the gate, crack the vases, place along the wall on your way back, etc. It never feels like you're doing something pointless or like you have to go out of your way. It all just flows rather naturally, and the progression and reward remain constant as well. And while this doesn't make the game any harder, in fact I'd say it's pretty easy overall, it does make it very fucking satisfying to play through. You're even able to just back out of levels and not have to lose any progress. You just jump back in to get the thing and then exit through the menu no problem. It's definitely one of the most laid-back games to complete 100%. Not because it's lacking in difficulty or anything, but just because the entire game is built around the idea of you doing it. Especially with simple little tools like being able to hold down all shoulder buttons to automatically lock on to where the nearest gem is, or even a fucking minimap. It's almost like it's a collectathon designed around collecting. Wow! Now, that ahead of its time shit is all well and great, but a PS1 game wouldn't be a PS1 game without it also showing its age just a little, mainly in the camera department. Thing is that despite having full analog control in regards to movement, the camera is still mapped to the shoulder buttons, where L2 makes it pan to the left, R2 makes it pan to the right, and pushing both buttons at the same time snaps the camera behind you. Which means that you're fucked if one wishes to look up or down, save for a first-person-ish view mode you can trigger by holding triangle. That completely stops the action because you can't move whilst using it. So, as I said, definitely not perfect. Though it does do a fairly decent job
Some of the time.
with keeping up on its own. The levels have been designed around it by being fairly open as well.
And you can even set the camera sensitivity to be a bit higher.
But I still cannot but feel that the rarer approach of putting the camera up high or far away is a much better idea for a collectathon such as this. As now, the camera, combined with the texture warping and occasional model clipping, can really make depth perception its absolute bitch, leading you to sometimes appear to move through objects or just having a hard time setting up the right trajectory to be able to break stuff. And also, the music doesn't seem to loop for some fucking reason. I do quite love this game though. And nostalgic waffling aside, it's also just pretty darn good. I mean, the level variety is fucking insane. Thematically, mechanically, and even in terms of size, enemy types, and overall structure, every level is completely its own. One stage could have you swimming around underwater, saving a bunch of turtles, while the next sees you shooting cannons, waging war, and getting ganked by birds. And there are about 25 of them as well, which is a lot considering their size. So much so in fact that even after having played the game a bunch of times, I still end up having moments where I enter a stage only for me to be all like,
bruh, what the fuck is this shit?
not because any of them suck or don't stand out enough, but just because of the sheer amount of shit going on in rapid succession. One can only process so much, and that alone makes it a lot of fun for me to go back to every so often. And of course, the many different collectibles and optional minigames, side quest thingies, whatever the fuck you want to call them, add to that as well.
Joke.